Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This video I'm going to show you a couple tips and tricks for removing moldings and trim. One of the biggest problems is trying to get these side moldings off of cars with just double face tape holding them on. So what I do is kind of like the glass guys. If you watch them cut a windshield out, I kind of improvise. I don't know if I'm the only one doing this, but I've been doing it for years. Take a piece of MIG welding wire about 16, 18 inches diameter, and a couple of combination wrenches, and I'll wrap the wire around the box into the wrench, use this for a handle, and we can slide this behind the molding and cut it off. Let me show you how. Okay, actually I'm not going to show you how this works. I don't feel like cutting a molding off my truck for no reason, so you'll have to use your imagination. But we got that MIG wire around these wrenches, and you're going to slide this behind there and drag it through. Now a couple things, when you cut these wires, they're really sharp on the ends, and if it's a blend panel, it'll scratch the panel up pretty good. So I always keep these things inside my fingers. Slide that behind there, and you want to keep your hands right up against the panel you're working with. You don't want to have it pulled out because the wire can cut into the molding. But if you keep that in there nice and tight, keep your hands pushed onto your panel, you can drag that through. You don't really need to saw on it. It'll help a little, but it's really not necessary. I found that if you saw on it too much, it'll heat the wire up and it'll break. But you can take this and you can drag it through there all the way down, and it'll cut that glue. It'll leave half on the molding, half on the door. So it does work real good. It won't damage your moldings. Some of the older ones would have those little plastic line-up pegs in there, and it usually cut right through them. Now if you've got a hard molding, a rigid molding that's got some of those, you can cut until you find them. You can feel it in there. You can usually put a wedge in behind the molding to pop it out, and you might have to cut the wire, feed it up in front of that peg, retie it, and start over. But it does work real good, and it also works good on emblems. If you want to save an emblem, you can get behind there and you can cut those off too. It'll do the same thing. So I'm going to show you another couple tricks I use for removing the glue, and like I said, this is about trim too, so I'm going to show you a tool I make for removing trim without marring stuff up. Okay, once you've got the molding off your door, whatever you're working on, whatever panel, you've got to get the rest of that adhesive off the door, off the paint. You don't want to gouge into the paint. And if you leave a lot of it on there and take an eraser wheel to it, it'll just sit there and smoke and burn up. It'll come off, but it takes you a lot longer. So it's easier just to get most of that adhesive off of there before you use your eraser wheel tool. So I take a razor blade tool, and I never use a new razor blade because they're just too sharp and they're going to gouge into the paint. And if it's under the molding, you're not going to see it, but if it puts a gouge above the molding, and if it's a blend panel, well, then you got to repair that. You're going to have to feather it out and take care of it. So I always use an old razor blade that I've used for other stuff. I'll keep a few of them around, and I'll take just a wide flat file, and I'll just drag that razor blade over that file, take any burrs off of it. Now it's not as sharp as a brand new one out of the package. You can do the top side too if you want, but you don't want any burrs on here, and you don't want it super sharp because it'll cut right into the paint. So a couple of strokes on the file, and then you can take that, and sometimes a little Windex or glass cleaner will help get that adhesive wet, and you can slide that in there and it'll peel it off pretty good. It won't mark up your paint, it won't ruin your finish, and it peels it off pretty quick. And then you can take your eraser wheel too and do the rest of it. But I've been doing that for years, and I'll leave a razor blade in that thing for months and months at a time. I'll just keep touching it up on a file, and it works real good. Next thing I'm going to show you is how to make a trim tool that I've been using. You know, if you go take trim panels off of cars anymore, they're making them tighter and tighter. The fit on these things, they'll have these little plastic insets that pop in there, and you can't figure out how to get them out without breaking it, without marring it up. So I buy these cheap putty knives, get them at Harbor Freight or somewhere. They're nice and thin, you can slide them in, but you can't have any corners on them. You've got to round them off. So I'll take it on the grinder, I'll round them off, and then I'll sand it down so it's super smooth, so there's no burrs or anything on there. And I always buy 2 or 3 at a time because they're real easy to lose. So I always keep some on hand. So I'm going to show you how I do it. Okay, once I got the corners rounded off, I want to run this on my DA. And that was 240 grit, so that'll smooth this out real good. Like I said, these trim panels are getting tighter and tighter anymore, especially if you've got like an Audi, BMW, these import cars. They put these little fancy inserts in there. They hide the screws behind. Some of them are wood grain. And if you get something in there, and if you just slip a little bit, it's going to put a gouge in there. And usually it's right there where the handle is, and you can't hide it. There's no way to fix them. So this here, you can usually slide in there without doing any damage, and you can pry stuff out. And if it does slip, it's smooth enough that if you're careful, you're not going to put a gouge in it. So, like I said, I pick up a couple of these at a time, so I've always got them laying around. But they help quite a bit. So I hope some of these tips were useful and you got something out of them. So if you like it, give me a thumbs up, send a comment if you like, and remember, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.